I would say the most realistic practical use for a tractor backhoe or a mini excavator is to dig your own grave for when your wife finds out what you spend on equipment. Hey, it's Brock here with Rock Hill Farm, and today I want to do a comparison between a tractor backhoe and a mini excavator. And I think this is a really relevant comparison because it's a real world decision that maybe a lot of you guys might be making. If you're buying a tractor or you already have a tractor, you'd be looking about the same amount of money to put a backhoe on that tractor or to buy one of these very small Chinese mini excavators. And there are very clear pros and cons to either choice. And today I want to talk about all the pros and cons, the difference between having one machine and two machines for speed of operation, for maintenance, for convenience, for transport. I want to talk about all that, but first what I want to do is use each machine to dig. So let's take a quick walk around and look at the machines we're comparing. Then we're going to do a real world digging test and kind of see how they perform, and then we'll go from there. So as far as the machines we have today, we have a gas powered mini excavator, a TYM BY85 backhoe on a TYM 574, and a small diesel-powered mini excavator. Now you'll notice there's no branding on these. If you're new here, that's because these are a new line of equipment that's just being made available. But I can tell you a little bit of information about them. The diesel unit is going to cost quite a bit more than the gas unit. This is going to be around a $17,000 machine. Now I've compared this to the same size Kimron that was running about $19,000, and I think it's a pretty comparable unit. This machine right here should be under $10,000, which makes it very comparable to this backhoe, which has an MSRP of $9,000. So when you're looking at buying a tractor and adding the backhoe, that is a major decision. Do I want to spend $9,000 to have this backhoe on this machine? Or would I rather have two separate machines so that I have a tractor and I have an excavator? And obviously that comes down to how well they perform, and then a lot of the other factors we'll talk about later. First thing I want to do is dig a hole with each machine. And in this, I'm just going to get a feel for how well I like the responsiveness of the controls, how smooth the operation is, how deep they can dig, how strong is the boom. My guess is that this should have more power for digging than either of the other two machines. The cylinders are a little bit bigger. The boom is a little bit longer. And keep in mind, this is a large tractor. For instance, the 38 horsepower John Deere tractor that I just sold would have had the same size or smaller boom compared to these little mini excavators. So this will be a timed test. I'm opening up my stopwatch on my phone right now, and we're going to see how long it takes to dig this hole and how deep of a hole we can dig. So I recently had a complaint that I speed up all my footage and no one can tell how well the machine is performing when the footage is played at high speed. So I'm going to leave at least a good portion of this digging at real time to try to give you that perspective. With all of the testing I'm doing in this video, I've got over an hour of footage of the machines actually working, and there's no way I'm making this video over an hour long. So for each section of the machines running, I'm going to play 2 minutes at real speed and then the rest of the footage at 4 times speed. Anytime I do any kind of comparison, I like to give a disclosure about any sponsorships or biases I might have towards either piece of equipment. Now, I am kind of biased towards all of these machines, but not one more than the other. These excavators and the tractor
And all of this equipment is sold by my good friend Jake at the tractor yard, and he provides these machines for me to use in my videos so that I can make content about them. I'm not paid by them, I'm not financially benefiting from anyone buying them, but I do get access to use them, and that matters. It just is what it is, and I'm not going to hide it. Now, a little sneak peek of the results is, out of these three machines, I like this excavator with the diesel engine the best for this little digging project we're doing. And I think that would be even more amplified if we were doing something like a long trench or running it all day. It is, however, also the most expensive of the three options, but we'll get into all the pricing towards the end of the video. I also have a section at the end of the video talking about the versatility of one option versus another, but something I think I forgot to mention is if you have a mini excavator and a tractor separate from each other and you have a second person to help with the project, that second person could already be moving this pile of spoils with the tractor. Whereas if your digging implement is on your tractor, you don't have that option. You can really only do one thing at a time.
Okay, I dug for 9 minutes and I'm pretty much at max depth. It could go a little bit deeper, but I would have to move the machine to lengthen the hole before I could get a little bit deeper. And moving the machines is a whole different category of comparison between these. So we're gonna say in 9 minutes to dig. I'm gonna see what I can dig in 9 minutes with the tractor. But first, I wanna do another timer and see how long it takes me to fill this hole in with this machine. And I'm gonna see how deep it is, roughly. So I'm 6 foot tall. This hole is over 5 foot deep. Now I'm filling this in. I don't know the best way to do it. I don't think the machine will push a pile that big. So I think I'm gonna have to get over here and shovel just a little bit of it back in, and then I'll be able to start pushing it in.
The reason I did not just start off trying to push the whole pile into the hole is I recently did the same thing with my larger 3.5 ton, 8,000 pound excavator from this same company, and it would not push a pile that was a little bit bigger than this. I had to knock it down or spread it out just a little bit first. So I'm pretty confident the result would have been the same with this. And even if it could push it, so much is going to spill over the top of that short blade that it's not really going to make it any better. So I guess I should try to grade what I like and don't like about each machine as I go, keeping in context that this is an inexpensive excavator comparable to most of the machines I've ran. And your expectation has to be based on the size and the cost of the machine. In general, this machine seems pretty well built. It's easy to use. I enjoy running it, to be honest. I kind of wish there was a way to change my blade angle without taking my hands off the drive sticks, and the other machine has that on a foot control. I honestly can't remember what a standard location is for that control on most excavators. The only thing I think this machine lacks at is extending the boom, raising and lowering the boom, pushing with the tracks. All of that seems to do pretty darn good, but sometimes it struggles to curl through dirt that isn't already broke up.
I don't know the exact time on that because I got just a little bit into it and realized my timer didn't start. But I think that took 7 or 8 minutes to fill that in. I think that part's highly subjective because there's a lot of different techniques you could use to fill it in. I maybe just suck at it or I messed around too long. It is what it is. So we dug a hole for 9 minutes and we spent about 8 minutes filling it back in. And we're gonna do the exact same thing here. I'm gonna save a lot of these conversations till the end, but there's a lot of other factors to consider. For instance, every work area is different. So it depends on what you're doing, but with the mini excavator, I could have set that pile of dirt anywhere. I could have set it within a 360-degree radius of this hole, 15 foot, 25 foot, however big the radius of that is, probably about 15 foot. I could have set that anywhere over there. So if I needed to dig a bunch of holes here, like next to each other, or whatever the case may be, or just get the dirt as far out of the work area as possible, I have that option. With the tractor backhoe, the only place I can really set the dirt is right next to it, which is what I did with the mini excavator. But the point is, you don't have any other options. And sometimes it really matters. You have to set that dirt behind you or the project doesn't work. And you can't with the tractor. It just is what it is. Another small difference in actually using these is with this machine, you don't always want to run it at high throttle. It's got a lot bigger engine, more hydraulic flow, and sometimes at full throttle it has more power than it needs and too much speed and it's really jerky. So you want to be able to adjust that throttle. You can't adjust the throttle from the seat. If you want to speed this machine up or slow it down, you have to climb down off of there, open the cab door, and adjust the throttle. On my little John Deere, I could lean back in the seat and I could reach it. You're never going to do that here. These are things that matter if you're putting a lot of hours on something. I gotta say, this is very different feeling. Everything about it just feels different, even though the control pattern is the same. I think I need a little throttle, and I'm not gonna stop the timer for this because it's a real thing that might happen. It didn't have quite the power I was looking for on the curl.
You're gonna see me fumble around a little bit with the way I'm operating here. I'm still adjusting to this control pattern, although I'm much more comfortable with it today than I was a week ago. And give me a couple more weeks, a couple more hours of machine time, and I won't have any problem at all. So while the tractor backhoe has the benefit of not needing to maintain another battery and another engine, it has the downside to the fact you have to do the work of putting the backhoe on the machine and taking it off, which can really be a hassle depending on your situation. And also, a tractor with a backhoe on it is long, and you can't get it into tight spaces.
I'm gonna give a very real assessment of this backhoe. I feel like each of the control patterns operates with a different speed, and I'm not crazy about it. Like the down function, and we did switch these, but the down goes really fast and the out goes slow, and it makes it hard for me to be fluid with it. If it was the only thing you use, you would adjust, but as it is, I'm really awkward. Another thing that's working against this, or it's just a real factor, is this has a much larger bucket on it. Makes it harder to dig, but it's removing more dirt at a time. Ideally, we'd have the same size bucket, but that's the bucket that came with that machine, and this is the bucket that came with this machine. Something else that I'm not gonna say is a positive or a negative is the material's getting stuck in this bucket more. On my John Deere backhoe, I had trouble with the material getting stuck in the bucket. I drilled holes in the bucket to try to help with that. It helped some, but it seems like, I can't explain why, it seems like I have more problem with that on the backhoes than I do the excavators that I've used.
One nice little benefit about the tractor backhoe is it's tied to such a heavy machine that I'm not bouncing around. I'm sitting perfectly still and comfortable. Where with the mini excavators, the amount of digging force they have compared to the weight of the machine and the smaller footprint primarily make them a little bit more of a bouncy experience to use. You're kind of rocking back and forth and all over the place.
I feel like this actually could have went a little bit deeper, but I'm at 10 minutes. I only dug for 9 minutes with the other one. The boom's getting close to hitting the ground at the hole, so we didn't have much left. Let's see how deep this is. We're at a full 6 foot here. So that dug a 5 foot hole in 9 minutes. That dug a 6 foot hole in 10 minutes. It's about the same. So let's fill them back in, see how that compares. The tractor would push all this dirt at once and make this faster, but I want, for comparison's sake, I want to tamp a little bit of it like I did with the other one. And because that's a better way to fill the hole in too. Here's something to factor in. I almost can't reach my whole spoils pile because where it fell, and if I wanted to pick it all up with the boom, I'd have trouble doing it. I'd have to move the machine, which requires you to get off the machine.
Now, if anyone's watching the timestamps on the videos to see how long this actually takes, keep in mind that I'm cutting some clips out of this with the tractor because there are several times when I have to drive off screen to turn and get a different approach angle. So the time I give you at the end is accurate. You might also notice how much the tractor dips down into that hole as I drive over it. So it's definitively packing the dirt more by having more weight in a small space as the tires drive across that.
8 minutes to fill that hole in. It felt like it was a cleaner, easier operation filling it in with the mini excavator, and it was a little more rough and messy doing it with the tractor. I also feel like that tractor compacted that down into the hole a little better, but on each of them, we're left with a good, clean, flat work area with not much debris left over. So really, if your job was to dig a hole, say, put something in the ground right there and then fill it back in for the same size hole, the same size job, took about the same amount of time. I found it a little more enjoyable with the excavator, but pretty similar performance on this. Now this machine, when you set it next to that one, it doesn't seem like a big size difference. Like you might say that's a 2-ton and this is a 1.5 ton. They look kind of similar, but this machine's going to cost about half the price of that one. And a big part of the difference is a gas engine versus a diesel engine. Diesel engines are just expensive. Now this has a smaller boom, a smaller bucket, smaller cylinders, shorter tracks. They look similar in size, but there's a big difference. So I'm going to try to dig the same hole, the same way, the same everything. I'm guessing it's going to take at least 25% more time. But this is a much more affordable option.
There is really no question that this machine is underpowered compared to the other two. Now, when you're comparing the two excavators, you're also talking about saving, $9,000, $10,000 on the price difference between them, so you would expect that. But the gas engine just doesn't put out as much power, and the machine's a little smaller. That being said, if I only needed to dig a few times a year on my property, how fast do you need to dig that hole? If you're running it every day, speed matters. If you're making a living with it, speed matters. If you're just dinking around on your property and you want to be able to do your own projects, that speed's less important. As I was digging with this machine, I kept wanting to move the machine to make it more efficient, because to get full depth, the hole has to have a certain amount of length to it to make the full digging movement and get deeper. But that leaves me digging too close to the machine to have the power. I don't know if that makes sense, but you can feel it when you're in it that I could dig this a little better if I backed up. The thing is, I'm trying to do a comparison, and people always call out when I don't do things the same, and I didn't move the other machines to dig. One change that I did make was putting the blade behind me while I was digging. I don't think it really affected performance that much. I just wanted to feel the difference that it made. And for this machine, in this instance, I kind of like it behind me, just because I'm tipping back more than forward. Now, in some other instances, I feel like it works better to have it in front of you. I've had people argue about that in the comments of my videos, and I think it is situation dependent.
Okay, let's see how deep we got this. I would say we got almost to 5 foot deep with this one. Just maybe a little bit shallower than with the first one, but I could have went a little deeper with that one. On this, I spent 11 minutes, where I only spent 9 there. Those last 2 minutes, we're trying to get just a little bit deeper, and it was doing it, but it was kind of a fight to get that last little bit. So, doesn't dig quite as fast, didn't dig quite as deep. I enjoyed running it though. Let's do the same thing we did with the others and fill it in.
With this little machine, I feel like the digging power is sufficient, the digging speed is sufficient, the controls are smooth enough. As you're about to see, I think that it has pretty good power to push straight forward into a dirt pile and fill in a hole. Where I think this machine really struggles is with turning. You should be able to just sit in one place and spin with a mini excavator. And obviously I don't mean the cab spinning, I mean the track spinning on the ground. And with this one, it kind of struggles to have enough power to just turn in place. I almost feel like I need to get moving just a little bit before I can start the machine to turn. I'm probably exaggerating it because I did turn in place, but that's the biggest place I notice it lacking power, is when I'm trying to spin in a circle.
The excavator that we used first, the diesel powered one, and the tractor backhoe, you could have a debate about which one did a better job at that task. And it was first or second. They were pretty close in how well they performed. I prefer that excavator over that backhoe for that task. We have a clear third place. This is not as efficient as the larger one. it feels like it has enough power for the size of the boom. Like that gas engine does a good enough job for the size of the machine. Feels kind of underpowered when it comes to try to push the pile in. But, you know, it just did the work. And it took, instead of 10 minutes, it took 12 to dig it. Instead of 8 minutes to fill it, it took 11. Whatever the case is, it took a little longer. It's a little bit slower. It's a smaller machine. But outside of this task right here, let's talk about reasons that you might want to buy one of these machines or the other. I've got just a few more things I want to say about the capabilities of these machines in different scenarios other than just digging a hole. After we cover that, we're really going to dive into the price and what I think is a good use of money. I don't like to tell anyone what to do, what to buy. I'm just going to tell you what I see whenever I look at the pricing on all of these machines and other options in the market. So we talked about digging and the ability to put your spoils where you want. This tractor backhoe is completely useless to me for digging around the pond, because no matter what angle I come into, I can't dig out here and set the dirt far enough away that I can move it. I've tried a couple times and it just really struggles with something like that. So one big thing you're losing with the tractor backhoe is the ability to locate your spoils. Now along those same lines, if you are, say, doing firewood or cleaning up a brush pile, especially when it's muddy, this machine, you cannot use the backhoe to move your logs around, because you could pick up a log, but then you've got to get off the backhoe, get in the tractor, drive where you want and set it back down. It doesn't make any sense. At that point, it makes a lot more sense to use a grapple on the front of the tractor. So this is not going to be used to sort material or anything like that. Where if I've got a tree down and I cut the limbs up and I chunk up the trunk, I can take this machine and move all that around and sort it and stack the logs into neat piles, move the brush around without hardly moving the tracks and making a bigger muddy mess. So for that type of work, this has big advantages. Now let's talk about pros and cons. If I bought that tractor and this excavator, I cannot take both of those on my truck and trailer. I cannot take both of those to a job. So if I take this machine alone, because I have a tractor and I have an excavator, then the excavator has to be able to do the whole job. You can take everything you need with this machine, whereas this machine, if you have a big job that you want to do, you're getting paid to run the machine, something like that, you may have to make 2 trips to get your equipment there. Now with this machine, I have one engine to maintain, one everything to maintain, one battery to maintain. If you have both machines, now you're doing maintenance on 2 machines. You're storing 2 machines. It's an extra layer of problems you open yourself up to. But, you know, that's offset by the advantages you get. So I come at this entire conversation based on the idea that we all need a tractor because we need something to mow our fields with and things like that. If you are either buying a tractor and trying to decide what you need to go with it, or if you already have a tractor and you're thinking about adding a backhoe or adding an excavator, then that's where I think the conversation gets really interesting. So this 57 horsepower cab tractor that can lift 2,800 pounds costs $35,000. Now if you take and then you add a backhoe to it, that $35,000 now becomes $44,000. Now let's compare that to one of the major brands. We'll say Kubota, but the same thing would go with John Deere or any of the other major manufacturers. This $35,000 tractor from Kubota is going to be $55,000 to $60,000, and with the backhoe, it's going to be closer to $70,000 for this. Now, if you were to buy this TYM tractor for $35,000, you could also get this excavator for $17,000. Now you're at $52,000 for an excavator and a tractor, when the comparable big name equipment would be $70,000. you can have this tractor, which is more capable than the Kubota equivalent, and this excavator for less than a tractor loader backhoe from Kubota. Now, if you wanted to get a comparable tractor to this, you're going to buy that Kubota for $60,000, and then you're going to buy a mini excavator this size. I've looked at them recently. They're going to run you about $30,000, $35,000. So you're at $95,000 for these two machines when you could get them as they sit for $52,000. Now, I think there's value in Kubota. The Kubota version of this is a better machine. It just is. I'm not trying to make any excuses for that. But we're talking about $90,000 versus $52,000. And the difference between those two numbers is $38,000, and that's a big number. One more option is to get the tractor that I have without the backhoe for $35,000. Get the big excavator that I have for another $35,000, and for $70,000, you have a nice sized machine like this with 2,800 pounds of lift capacity, and you've got a 4-ton mini excavator that is in a whole nother class range than anything we've looked at today. All of that's for $70,000. Now, if you wanted that from Kubota, you're looking at $130,000. I'm throwing a lot of numbers around here, but the point I'm making is the price on these makes them attractive. Another factor that might be important for a lot of people, if you have a narrow gate on your property or you're in the woods in tight spaces, there are a lot of places that these excavators can go that you'll never get that tractor with a backhoe to. So definitely a big factor to think about. All right, I didn't really mean for this to be a long video, but I have a feeling it's been a long video. So I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.